Alan Quinlan, good morning to you.
Good morning. How are you, Joe?
James Lowe's pretty good, but so's Larmour. Larmour's reached a level now where you're like, look. Anyway, no, let's not talk about the World Cup again, right? We should have a pact that we're never going to talk about it again until we have to. But Jesus, Larmour would have been good in the World Cup, wouldn't he?
Would have been, yeah. He was. I think he was sensational. We did a game Saturday for Virgin, and every time he touched the ball, the second half was a little bit strange because obviously the game is over and it gets a bit scrappy and stuff like that. But his ability to just step and accelerate and probably win the ball in the air was the key. That's the area that you want him to be rock solid on, and if the attack is, we know what the attack is going to be like.
Leo Cullen was asked, obviously, look at his, I didn't hear the question, but I saw the answer was like, that's grand, but actually he was really strong under the high ball, which is more important for us.
Very important, I think, and that's probably the key when you're playing in, windy, wet conditions possibly that you could have in a Six Nations. So it's been able to dominate the air, and to be fair to Rob Kearney, like, he was the best in the business at that. Across the board, I think, so dominant, so aggressive, continuously winning the ball in the air, and those 50-50s, 60-40s, 70-30s, he won them all when they were against him, when he had no right to at times. So I think that's always, that's the only question mark, and any time Larmour's played full back, that question comes up, well, the rock solid kind of fundamentals, and I just thought there was a few on Saturday, particularly in that first half, they were 50-50, and he dominated.
But he's not just taking them, like a fullback would take them and get smashed. Jordan Larmour was actually, to borrow an NFL term, making yards after the catch as well. He was coming through the catch. He was getting beyond the guy who was there to hit him.
That'll not always be the case. There'll be ones that you're just in the air, you're going to have that collision, you're going to come down, you're going to get smashed.
Yeah.
So they're the kind of things that you want solid from him, and defensively, making good defensive reads, because, again, something Rob Kearney was outstanding with, and he's still outstanding, in my opinion, as regards his spatial awareness. He was never the quickest fullback in the world, but his ability to just look one step ahead and be able to read the game very, very well. So oftentimes when an out half would see some space before he gets the ball, and it's good. That's what good fullbacks do. Okay, they can cover that space and get to it, show a bit of a gap, and Kearney was really good at that. So they're the kind of things that he'll be testing in. If he's one bad game at fullback, if he gets selected for Ireland, everyone will start kind of going. So I wouldn't get too far ahead, but what you get in his attack is just sensational.
He's not going to get that space again for quite some time, is he? Or in a Six Nations, like Northampton defensively were.
Yeah, they were
shocking.
very, very poor, and he realised that, and everyone who knows the game inside out will. Different coaches and Six Nations coaches he comes up against, but he has an ability to step even in tight spaces
both
and
feet.
stuff. Yeah, he has. Yeah, so, and he's strong. He doesn't mind contact as well. So he's fast becoming, the full package, and I think it's just strengthening those fundamentals more for him. Will make him a real top-class player.
Timing of his passes as well, Quinny, you mentioned on Saturday. Like when you say the full package, yeah, brilliant in the air. We know his acceleration, we know his ability to step off both feet, but the weight on his passes and the timing of some of the passes he delivered on Saturday, when he could have kept going with it or he could have thrown it a bit earlier, that seems to have come on as well. Yeah, and
probably the last break that he made where he was stepping and bobbing and weaving and the crowd were reacting to it, that was probably one where you think, right, okay, it's time for an offload or a pass now, but he kept going. But there was a few in the first half where they zoned in on him and they realised that he was going to cause them problems, and just give him a lovely weighted pass. James Lowe ran onto one at one stage there in that first half, and it was simple stuff, but just executed brilliantly and with pace onto the ball. So it was a fantastic performance from him.
We've been talking a good bit about Doris, just how impressive he's been taking his opportunity. It was interesting that he plays the whole game, and he's going to play a lot more of these games, and he's going to play the whole game. It's going to get harder and harder the more games he plays for somebody to take his place.
Take his place on the Leinster side?
Takes place on the Leinster side, yeah.
For sure. I think he's he got a head knock a couple of weeks ago. Max Deegan played a couple of games and played really well, and he's a very good player as well. So,
but Doris was straight back in.
I think Doris is just after accelerating to another level. He was sensational in the two games, and I think he is a real option for Ireland now, not in World Cup in 4 years' time, now, because I think he's just a really intelligent footballer. He's all action, he's athletic, he's brilliant ability to step, and so I think he's a real option now for Ireland, and I think the way he's played, so he's a top-class talent, and I know Leinster have been kind of excited about him for a couple of years, and he's shown that over the 2 games. As Dave said, Northampton really, I think, after last week, I think they were shell-shocked. They played really well in the first half against Leinster, the away game. Second half, it just kind of went to pieces. They threw everything at Leinster and had no answer for the Leinster defence. Leinster just counter-punched, scored tries and dominated them. They were deflated coming to Dublin this week, made a number of changes, so they were poor. But I think over the 2 games, you have to kind of keep perspective. I think he was absolutely brilliant, and I think he's a real option for Ireland now.
To start? Or is that like he plays the Italy game? Is that what you mean?
I'd seriously consider him being in the conversation about starting for Ireland.
Well, who's in better form as number 8?
Yeah, well, it's not. Do you know what? I was trying to think about this before.
You have to pick the team today.
After the weekend.
Can you argue that CJ Stanner should be starting at 8?
Ireland has 4 professional teams, and so therefore we put a lot of store in what you've done for me over the entire time of your career, because we don't have 15 players. We don't have you're good for me this week, I'm going to pick you. We've never done that in rugby. Maybe that's our problem. Maybe
may need to change.
And maybe that's exactly that. It doesn't matter how brilliant you were, that you were once the Lions or you were once the best in your position in the team of the Six Nations or even the world. It's like this week, who's going well?
Well, that was definitely an issue at that event that took place a few weeks ago that we will not mention. There weren't not enough guys within that squad who were in their best form starting.
For a long time,
If you're to pick the Six Nations starting 15 this afternoon, why would you not have Doris?
I'll tell you why, because if you think back to the game in Chicago, and in the build-up, Schmidt goes to Carney and says, come on, I need a big one for me today. And he plays unbelievably well. But he hadn't played well for 18 months before that.
But this is not the All Blacks in Chicago we're talking about.
Then he had a run for 2 years where he was exceptional. So genuinely, lads, and I do agree in a certain point that pick a load of new fellas.
Form is temporary, class is permanent.
And you do what you can actually do is more harm than good there to your, when you need that player to go back to him, that you can kind of, you have to have a mixture of it. You have to bring in youth and young players, and I'm all for Larmour starting, Caelan Doris being in the mix, Cian Kelleher being in the mix. Absolutely. There's no doubt about that.
Ronan Kelleher, you mean?
Ronan Kelleher, sorry. But I still think you can't, and I said this after that tournament you're talking about, we're not allowed to mention, that you just can't discard guys, because when the going gets tough, and you got to try and keep winning the Six Nations as well, and it'd probably be based on who'll be around in 4 years. That might influence some of the decisions that happen.
It's very far away. 4 years is very far away.
Good management out of Andy Farrell now would be, he has to reinvigorate things and refresh things up a bit, and you do that by bringing in young players who don't have a bit of baggage on their shoulder, and they bring energy and they will inspire others. So if you bring in someone like Caelan Doris into the squad, and Scott Penny or whoever, whatever young players that might come in, suddenly if you're an older established player, you go, well, I've got to up my game here, and you're down then to like ultimatums from coaches where you're saying, look, I need a big one like you did with Rob Kearney, or else. And the or else scenario, sometimes that can change a player's whole career. So to go back to what you said, Dave, I don't think Standers, I don't think he's in that place where he should be dropped, because I think he's actually been very, very consistent.
I'm not saying we need to discard the likes of CJ Stander, and also, as Sarah said, 4 years it's far too far away.
Yeah.
But the team that's picked for the Six Nations should not be with a view on who's available in 4 years' time.
No, it shouldn't.
That needs to go back to the exact same issue we've had for previous World Cups.
Should be form players, and
it's all about the World Cup cycle. The World Cup cycle should really only be 18 months max. Because you're putting too much importance on it. My point for the Six Nations is that we should be picking our best team. What is the 15 that will give us the best chance of winning this game today?
Well, let's pick a backs, right? Scrum half is Cooney.
At the moment, it's Cooney. Yeah, I think he's put himself in pole position, but again, it's down to when the selectors sit down, and what particularly Mike Catt, it'll be interesting now what he thinks coming in
As a fresh pair of eyes.
Yeah, and as well around his attacking philosophy. You know what I mean? Does John Cooney give you more zip? At the moment, you would say yes, because he's doing that for Ulster week after week after week. So it depends what he offers and adds.
Ross Byrne at half at this stage?
Who I don't see an alternative to
Unless
Ross Byrne.
Carberry plays at the weekend and plays over Christmas in the two inter-pros and has involvement, and then plays the two European games, I think he needs to play in the next week, and he needs to get 3 or 4 games under his belt, or 3 or 4 involvements. They don't need to be full games, because there's talk that he was close to being possibly available this week now. So if that's the case, but if not, I don't think you should pick Joey Carberry if he just plays the latter stages and has involvements late on, because
that's the whole point, isn't it? That's you're giving Ross Byrne belief and everybody else belief, going, if you're the person who's in form and playing well and have got your place on merit, then we're going to pick you, right?
Yes,
As opposed to we have our team made and you're making up the numbers in training. Otherwise, that's what that decision would send.
Yeah.
On the halfbacks, Quinny, if, say for example, if it's a halfback pairing of Byrne and Cooney, who's your goal kicker for the opening round of the Six Nations? Isn't Cooney the best goal kicker in Irish rugby at the moment?
It seems that way, yeah. Yeah, it does, yeah.
And that
So I
takes the
think
pressure off Ross Byrne then.
he's kicking
Go out
as
and play
well,
your
yeah.
game, get the backline going, get the likes of Jordan Larmour brought into the play as often as you can. Don't worry about what's happening with the kicking team.
If you're an out half, don't you want to kick though? Because that is your chance to get
Only
into
if
a
you're
game
the best
when it's not
goal
going
kicker,
well.
though.
Yeah, maybe, okay.
Cooney is doing it metronomically week after week when the stakes are at their highest.
The centres are obvious, are they? It's Henshaw and Ringrose.
Who are the alternatives? Ringrose obviously is razor sharp at the moment. He's got 2 hat-tricks this season already. Henshaw's not making any mistakes.
And to be fair, Henshaw's come back very, very well after the injury at the World Cup, and without kind of setting the world on fire in the last 2 weeks, he's just putting in a massive amount of tackles, really good carries. So I think he's put himself right back in the mix. But Bundyacki's played well for Connacht as well, so it's either or, I think.
Okay,
and,
so that's fine. You'd be happy.
Chris Farrell had a real good game at the weekend for Munster, so it's still those 4 with probably Aki, Henshaw and Ringrose.
Okay, and then the wings. We've got Larmour at fullback, do we?
Yes.
So, yeah.
And the 2 wings at this point, Andrew Conway has to be in whatever team.
I think he has to be in. I just...
Should have been in the team.
Yeah. And
now.
You know, going back to Scotland, at that first game at the World Cup, I think Larmour and Conway were just brilliant that day, you know, and probably looking back, they should have continued on and played the big games, but Conway has to start, I think.
Stockdale's been playing well at fullback for the last couple of weeks for Ulster. Does that mean his form is good again and he gets back in, or do you again say, look, Jacob, on the wing, your form for us has not been great, so we're going in a different direction? And you've got to buck up. Is that how those conversations should go? Or do you go, look, this guy's going to be a superstar for us for the next 4 years, and we're going to talk him out of whatever difficulty he's having on the wing?
There's issues about defence and timing and coming out of the line and his reading of the defence. His contest in the air is non-existent for me. For a big guy who's very, very tall, he's strong. His attack is, you know, when he gets the ball, he's very, very good in attack, but he's got to fix those other parts of the game. You watch someone like Dave Kearney on Saturday, you know, who wouldn't be as talented as Stockdale. You watch the work rate, the aggressive nature of the way he defends, the counter-rucking, the carries, the physicality. And Jacob Stockdale needs to find that part of his game to be and he has an ability to be world-class, so I'm not knocking him and saying he has incredible talent. But you know, box kicks putting up in the air and he's kind of meandering up along. He's got to get up in the air and win that and dominate the air. He's got to be aggressive with his carries when the contact happens. He's got to read. So they're the issues, and he's still a very, very young player.
Yeah.
So it's how Andy Farrell manages that.
How would you do it? Would you drop him and say, you've got to go away and work on that and come back to me, and put somebody else in? Or do you say, I know you're capable of doing this, let's see it?
At the moment, I would probably drop him, because I think Keith Earls probably is your other winger, is he?
Well, Conway we think should be in the team.
Yeah.
So is Keith Earls... There's 3 guys in the running for this slot, and I think Dave Kearney merits a mention now, because over the last couple of weeks you can see exactly why he became such a favourite of Joe Schmidt. Whenever he was fit, he played for Joe, and he's scoring tries frequently, albeit in a Leinster team that's just carrying all before them. He's got 7 tries in 8 games this season, which can't be sniffed at. His defence is almost error-free when you watch him. He doesn't make the sort of reads that Jacob Stockdale tends to read and hasn't really improved upon. So I think he's in the argument. But yeah, it's one of Stockdale, Earls and Kearney. Can you treat Stockdale differently to the rest of them, in that you're very worried about what damage you might do in the long term?
No.
Like, Stockdale is going to be around. He's lethal.
Are all sports people so fragile that they can't?
No, they're not.
Be dropped?
I was dropped several times, and
isn't it kind of liberating?
It was the making of me at times. I dropped for a quarter-final for a European Cup in 2000, where I played the 6 pool games. I was absolutely devastated, and I probably sulked for a while, because it was the first major disappointment around selection happened. And the following year, I'm on the Irish team.
Yeah.
So I went from that situation. So it does make you, and it does bring you back and make you stronger.
Yeah.
And like,
we need
the
to
reality
do
is, we can't mollycoddle these players either and say, well, just because, and I'm not mollycoddling any of them, saying, well, you can't drop Conor Murray because you're dropping Jacob Stockdale or Peter O'Mahony or Stander or Ian Henderson, people who, Ian Henderson didn't perform in that game, in that tournament as well. So there's a number of players that, I just think with some of the older ones that there's a danger that you could put them out the grass in a sense.
I wouldn't put anybody out the grass. I'd say, look, we're going to need you at some
point. Young players need to go through that a little bit.
Yeah.
If they're playing well, select them every week, but
some of the older players might have a career extension by virtue of being dropped now, as opposed to
you never know.
Well, let's move on, because there is obviously a big talking point from Munster's defeat to Saracens. Here's Owen Farrell talking about the impact of the mid-game melee. Have a listen to this.
I think obviously Munster's a great side, and they came here. We knew it was going to be a massive game, and it was a tense one in the first half, and I thought they probably got more excited about the game than we did in the first half, as it was slow. I thought they fought for everything and got excited about winning scraps and every little decision that went their way, and I thought they out-infused us a little bit, and it took half time for us to show ourselves probably what we're about a bit more, and thankfully we did that, because it was much more enjoyable in the second half.
Who would have made that point at half time then? Would it have been yourself, or would it have been Mark?
No, it'd have been everyone, yeah.
And what changed then in the second half? Did you just feel that you were just fighting a little bit more for everything?
Yeah, I thought we came out in the second half, and I thought our intent was through the roof from the goal. Really, I thought we were more excited. Thought we did make a few mistakes at the start of the second half, which didn't allow us to build as much pressure. And then obviously there was a bit of a scuffle, and our intensity went through the roof.
Yeah, and then Neil asked who started, and he was like, I don't know. So the newspapers are printing, and a fat P was the allegation, was allegedly said to...
against Jamie Kearns and Jamie George.
Yeah. And then it was like why it started didn't seem like that big a deal until Mark McCall comes out afterwards and goes something, I can't even remember the exact phrase, but it was like something mean was said.
Something horrible was said.
Is it something horrible? What was the exact phrase? From what I know, something pretty bad was said at Jamie. He was like, oh, Jesus, something very serious must have been said here. And then you're like, was that it? F off, you fat P? Was that?
Yeah.
Look, it's not great, right? The doctors shouldn't be involved.
See, I think if you hear stuff all the time as a player in the field, particularly if you're in a kind of a big game, there's a rivalry and there's a bit of a spark in the game, you'll often get comments, F you and all that kind of stuff, which is just kind of, sometimes you laugh at it and you bank it and he carries the ball next, you try and kill him, or vice versa. And it's just, you got to be careful. There's always a little bit of sledging out in the field, and guys just shake hands afterwards, and it's I wouldn't say it's part and parcel of it, but it happens. It's no big deal. Loads of people have said loads of things to me, and vice versa in the field, but I think where I understand a little bit where he's coming from is there's a boxing ring. Imagine it's a ring, and someone on the outside is now interfering with verbal. So it does kind of, in a sense, it probably would infuriate you. You know, if a doctor or someone said something to me in the sideline, I would. But I just thought his reaction was, I was a psycho at times, but like, that was a massive overreaction. But I just thought he kind of gestured back and said a few things himself and was walking away, and then decided to turn back again. So it obviously kind of was still grating him a bit. But if that's what was said, you effing P.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a big reaction for something like that.
Yeah, it's I don't know. So in the end, there should be no significant repercussions for anybody.
Well, I think EPCR will you know, they're going to investigate it on. You know, they're not going to just kind of not say anything about it here, and I think maybe they're right just to have a look at it and talk to Munster and talk to the doctor. There may be a fine, I don't know, but I just think it's a storm in a teacup, really.
Yeah. All right. Good stuff, Quinny. Thanks for that.